You have 5 seconds to subscribe, or he will be behind your back. Children of teen parents, what was your life like growing up? How is your relationship with your parents now? My mum and dad were 16 and 18 when I was born. My mum came from an abusive home, and my dad from a happy home. However, shortly before I was born, lost his dad, and shortly after I was born lost his mum. We had no money, no holidays, and struggled to make it through every month. But I can say hand on heart that I was loved with everything they had to give, and that meant I had an extremely happy childhood, and I was raised to respect people and work hard. Now aged 24, we are the best of friends. I talk to both of them about everything. And finally, after 28 years together, mum and dad are getting married next month. My Mill was 17 when she had my husband. Dad wasn't around. They were dirt poor, but my husband never noticed. She still made sure he could play all the sports he wanted and all the cool clothes he wanted. She always worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, but still made plenty of time for him. No vacations to Disney. They went camping and fishing. Cheap to free things like that. Husband grew up to be the best man I know. Mill and husband are very close. We're over there at least twice a week. I had one teen parent. The other was a lot older. The teen parent has said I got her life together, and she wouldn't have made it to where she is now without me. We are very close now, even though we don't live in the same country. I was treated like a friend, and not a kid, when I was growing up. I had to witness relationship fails. I can see how much they have changed / grown from teen to adult. I felt like I was born at the wrong time. When I'm around my extended family, I was planned, and I wish I wasn't. My biological mom was 16 when she had me. She put me up for adoption to give me a better life than she could provide. My dad disappeared when he found out she was pregnant. He was 17. Adoptive parents brought me home at about 3 months. I'm now 35. I have never and will never have contact with her. I reached out once in my teens, asking for medical history, but somewhat hoping she'd want to talk even a little. I wasn't expecting or even wanted her to be a big part of my life. She gave me the medical history via the agency, closed adoption, with the stipulation that I never contact her again, as she was by then married with a family and they knew nothing about me. I can totally respect that. She made a tough choice as a teen and she moved on to build her own life. I'd like to think that she and I think alike. We don't wish anything bad for the other. We just know that biology doesn't necessarily entitle you to anything. My adopted parents offered to get a private investigator to help find her. They still don't believe that I just don't have any interest. I know who I am. I don't need to meet the person who pushed me out in order to feel whole. Edit. A few more facts, because there seem to be a lot of people with similar situations. I know all of the above from what my parents were told via the adoption agency. We had a vague background, but no names or anything that really could have identified my bio mom. I have a brother who is also adopted from a different family. He is 3 years younger. He was told at the same age, 2nd grade, and feels the same as me. We agree that because it wasn't a secret in our family, we had no reason to feel like anything was wrong so far as our parents were concerned. However, my brother knows more about his bio mom, as his adoption wasn't nearly as top secret. I swear I'm an alien or something, as mine. She wrote him a letter. He knows her name and a lot about her from the files, but he doesn't care to seek her out. Then again, he doesn't really care to have much to do with our adoptive parents, myself or our stepbros, so I think he just doesn't give a SHT. My feelings were never hurt by biomom's refusal for contact at all. She made a really tough choice, and I have a good life. She cared enough to let me have a nice life. I care enough to let her continue hers. I mentioned in a comment below that part of the reason I didn't want to meet her is that I honestly was afraid that she would be a terrible person. I don't know that I could live with myself knowing I was related to a bad person. I don't mean a serial killer, although that would be fked up. But what if she were a drug addict or a manipulative money grubber like my friend's biomom? What if she hated me? This is something I feel okay with not knowing. I would not call myself well adjusted, but I've never really suffered with the issues of identity due to adoption. I hope I don't come off as cold or detached, but it just really didn't matter to me. My dad and stepmom raised me, taught me how to be a good person and work hard to enjoy life. That to me is what matters. Before anyone asks, I do not want kids at all. I like them, but I'm not super responsible with money and stuff. So I just think it's better I don't. Lol. Also I have chronic health issues that keep me from being very active. I don't know how well I'd do with a kid, but if I did I would adopt. SHT and SHT. I grew up poor. Like stupid poor. Like I never had new clothes. Slept on a pile of blankets. My house was run down with no drywall. When most kids get a car or at least a license for their 16th birthday, I got a plastic tub and a Goodwill belt. I thought that it was really hard to be middle class, and it wasn't really attainable. Turns out my parents were just SHT at being responsible. Now that they're older, my dad is a sad alcoholic and my mom is a narcissist who I keep in contact with but with boundaries. My parents were 19, with my mom just graduating, and my dad had dropped out in 10th grade. Growing up they worked so hard to make sure we, being my 7 siblings, but they are split up so one of them is my full sister, got all that we needed. My dad worked days and nights trying to start a construction company and my mom worked full time while going to college. So now 20 years later my dad is business owner and my mom is one of the top people at an insurance company from working there since I was born. Due to both of them being so hardworking and responsible I was privileged with having a stable home. I wouldn't have wanted to have any other parents. From them being so young I have a really close relationship with both of them and they feel more like friends than anything. It is a little weird though, because my dad looks really young and he has 5 kids with the youngest being a 2-year-old and I'm only 19. So when we go to the store and I'm holding my brother people think we are dating and sometimes say things like you better ask your mommy if that's okay. Edit. Put wrong number of siblings. Oops. My mom got pregnant with me when she was 17. My dad was the same age, maybe a few months younger. They both dropped out of high school and tried to make it work. It didn't and they split up when I was 2. My dad moved out of state and my mom knew she wouldn't be able to give me a good and stable life, so she gave me to my grandma. I grew up pretty poor, but my grandma always worked 2 or 3 jobs plus went to college to make sure she could provide for me. At the time I didn't really appreciate it and was always resentful that I didn't have as nice of a life as my friends. Their fridges were always full. They were able to do extracurriculars that costed money. They had room for people to come over for a sleepover and their parents had extra time to spend with them. I got to spend time with my mom pretty often, probably around once a month or so, and tended to favor her over my grandma because of that silly resentment thing. Now that I'm an adult, 24, and much past the age my mom and dad were when they had me, I have realized that I can't blame them much for how they acted. They were definitely kids and I can't imagine going through that even at my age now. I still have a good relationship with my mom, even though it gets tougher and tougher as I get older, because she sort of stayed stagnant in her emotional age. Having a young cool mom was great as a kid, but is sort of frustrating and disheartening when I feel more mature and responsible than her. I've also gained a lot of respect for my grandma. She's in a lot of debt and doesn't have a lot of friends or free time, and I know that's mostly because she put everything she had into making sure I had a good life when she didn't really even have to. I paid for college by myself with the help of scholarships, grants, and loans. I started living on my own as soon as I could, and now I have a decent job that allows me to help her out with her bills when she needs it. We've gotten to the point where we talk on the phone often, and most of my wrongly placed anger is gone. She recently broke down and said I'm the best thing she'd ever done with her life, and that she was so proud of me. I cried a lot. I was born when my mother was still 17 and my dad had just turned 18. My parents ended up divorcing when I was 5 years old, and they both remarried and had other kids, but I was an only child until I was roughly 11 years old. Growing up for me was way different than it was for any of my siblings, not just because of the divorced parents thing, but my parents were so young. I remember being 6 to 8 and my parents being heavily into the popular culture of the time. This was really cool to experience, being a kid in the 80s, and having my dad into Atari and Nintendo right along with me, or my mom being into the music of the time just like any other 22 to 23 year old. My relationship with my parents is great. I definitely have more in common with my dad than I do with my mom. But overall I've never had a lot of issues with them, and now as a guy in my 30s I feel closer to them than any of my other siblings, because they are still in their late teens/early 20s. My parents got pregnant with me at 16. They had shitty parents who abandoned them. They got married as soon as they were legally permitted to do so. They faced a lot of scorn from one set of righteous grandparents and insistence on an abortion from the other set. My childhood was difficult. My parents weren't ready to be parents. I know they loved me, but I was molested by a neighbor from 4 to 6 years old. I was a little soldier and suffered a soldier's punishment when I didn't obey Sergeant. My dad joined the army to provide for me, but it just wasn't a good childhood. Edit. I'm actually really close to my parents now. We were all in college together. My mom and dad both have great jobs, and so do I. We have come a long way from being dirt poor, uneducated soldiers. We have good retirements, take vacations a few times a year together, and have family dinner every Sunday. My dad has a rosy outlook of poverty, near abusive start as a family. My mom is apologetic and unable to really talk about it. I'm overcome with resentment once every few years, but I work through it with a mental health professional. Happy ending to a tragic start. My mother was 14 when she was pregnant with me, 15 when she had me. She had to drop out of university because of me, but the cliche just about ends there. She immigrated to the US where, even though she couldn't study medicine, like she had in Nicaragua, she was able to study respiratory therapy, while she also worked, go maintain us, while my aunt babysat me. We ended up very prosperous and now I'm months away from my US medical license. My parents sucked at parenting. They had me at 18. I spent a lot of time with other family members and I lived with my grandparents for a long time. I eventually moved out in high school to live on my own and moved away for college. It wasn't until my grandparents passed away and I graduated college that I started talking to them more, and now we spend time together every few weeks. It was almost like we all acted the same age. They weren't very rational like other parents, and it seemed dramatic. At other times, they wanted to be my friend instead of a parent. This just caused weird trust issues, like they were trying to bait me into telling them stuff about my life, and then they would use it against me later. It always felt like they were competing with me too when I got good grades, got into colleges, graduated, etc. There was always some animosity about how it was my fault they didn't get those same things at the same point in their life. In a weird way, it made me a lot more independent because I couldn't rely on them for much. We also didn't have a lot of money and they worked odd jobs/hours. After college I started making more than them and got a nice house, got engaged, etc. So even now it's still a little weird sometimes. Friend of mine had a baby at 16. The daughter is now 13 and is the most well-adjusted, best-mannered and fun kid I've ever met. They have an incredible relationship. Stop rewatching Gilmore Girls, man. It's over. I feel very lucky that things worked out well for my parents. Married at 18. Babies at 19. 4 kids before 25. 30 years later they are still together and still very in love. Thief had many ups and downs of course. My relationship with them is great. They work their asses off to give us a good life, moving from the trailer park eventually to a 4-bedroom. You couldn't necessarily expect all these great things from couples of any age, but they made it happen because they work well as a team and they made our family into a team. My mom had me at 16. My dad was 20. They married once my mom was 18. He joined the Navy and my mom went to nursing school. They had 2 more kids. I feel like I'm in the minority here, but my life was fine. We moved a lot due to being a military family and even within the same cities, because my parents would move us to better areas as they could afford to. By the time I started college they were doing really well, so my younger siblings have a lot more than I did at their age. My relationship with them is fine. They live 1 town away, so I see them pretty often. 16 years later, and she still acts like a fucking child. Woman, you're 33, not 17. Act like it. Get your degree. 16 years of on/off schooling never finished. Clean your fucking room. Keep trash out of the goddamn sink. And stop fucking complaining about being a parent. All 4 kids were your fault, not ours. TL. Doctor, my mom's a fucking baby. Mother was 17 when she had me. The father was, I believe, around 25 or 26 at that time. Anyway, it was a mixed bag. On the one hand, mother worked a lot to pay the bills, and so I didn't really see her all that often. On the other, when we were together, she had boundless energy and enthusiasm for the things we did. It wasn't enough to go to a park. We had to walk all over the park. It wasn't enough to play tennis. Popular at that time, it was tennis for 6 hours in the blazing sun. She was so very passionate about everything from the TV shows we watched, MASH and V, to the games we played. She always made me feel like, whatever else was going on in her life, I was the most important part of it. I'm 38 now, and I live about 50 feet from her. Wouldn't change it for anything. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments under the video, write what you think about all this. And also do not forget to watch our other videos. Bye.